Hi, I'm Hive Radical. That's the online moniker I go by. I just finished watching your series, Clark Johnsen. I believe your YouTube moniker is Lorenz. Your series, the 5-part series, is Your Friendly Neighborhood Gay Mormon, March 2008. I think it's kind of something you could address on the aside, but just the dynamics of YouTube, where to enter into real conversation with people, you can have a 5-part series. So basically, you can listen to somebody talk for about an hour before responding. It just creates an interesting dynamic. But aside from that, I just wanted to address several points throughout your series. And I think there's kind of an overall theme that's tied to personal identity and the concept and idea of change, and changing oneself, the impetus for change, that kind of rather focuses, I believe, a lot of the points and ideas you bring up, and I think it highlights the contrast between your views and the position of the LDS or Mormon Church regarding that. So I'm going to start off with something that I commonly see, and it has some pretty strong ties to what I've perceived in the church, just in meetings I've attended and people I've interacted with. It's something you put forward at the initial part, and I believe it probably would strike a chord with some people, but I think it's based on a false premise. Ultimately, you state that if you believe something that's fearful, then it's just not conducive to believing in that thing. And this has some ties into your idea, your statement that follows that, and you say, and the truth is you don't know what's true. Your assertion that nobody knows what's true. And then this is also, they're all kind of tied together. But you say no one's truth is more valid than the next person's truth. Again, to go off this idea that because something, if you believe something that's fearful, then it's just not conducive to believing that. I just don't see how you can defend that view. There's a lot of things I'm scared to death of that I believe in, and I believe it's my belief in the bad outcomes that can come by inappropriately approaching things, whether it's gasoline or electricity or heights or sharp objects, things that I believe we get this overall wrong hold on the concept of fear. And it's a similar thing with money. There are certainly those scriptures, Christ says that he doesn't have the spirit of fear. That's not, the spirit of fear is not of God. And likewise, the love of money being the root, or love or the desire to have money being the root of all evil. And people will take these things, which are true. It is true. We're not to have a spirit of fear, and we're not to want money, but they take these things to the extreme and think that means that fear is bad, and that means that money is bad. But that's not at all what God has said. And I think by taking those tangents, that's where you're kind of diverging from what's right. Now, to address this, because you say you assert that it's kind of interesting thing to assert, just because you followed up with, and that's something that I personally have come to believe. If the truth, like the assertion that you can't know the truth, well, how can you know that you can't know the truth? The whole agnostic, doubly, how do you know that it's unknowable? And there is some degree of arrogance in that, and some degree. And this even ties into another thing you take And again, I believe it's correct and right and good that we have a correct and good perception of ourselves. We're sons and daughters of God. We all have the divine in us. And nobody, it makes it pretty clear in the scriptures that no matter where you're at, you can turn to God, and the worth of souls is great in the sight of God. And that applies for everybody. And I want everybody to know that. I believe it, and it's true. And even though, again, a lot of these go against your concept of somebody being able to know what's true, and only being able to know what they've felt, or that nobody's truth is more valid than another. I mean, just in simple reference to the laws of physics, you can have different people believing different things, but you can empirically test those things, and through those tests you can determine on physical that side who's, if you have a truth, a belief in something, and it is closer to the truth of reality, then your knowledge of that enables you to do things that others can't. Now, again, you can get down and argue, what's the definition of valid? Because that's your statement. You say no one's truth is more valid than the next person's truth. Well, if it's all relative, then it doesn't matter. But we'll get into that a bit more. So again, if you have some incorrect view, and somebody has a correct view of a certain principle in nature, they're going to be able to capitalize on that. And your feeling that it's not valid, that it's not more valid than yours, or that it's not more empowering, is, you can hold on to that delusion, but that does not in and of itself make it correct. You can talk yourself all you want. If you're falling out of a very tall building and approaching the pavement, you can have all the belief you want that you're not falling out of a building and you're not approaching the pavement, but it doesn't change the reality of what's happening. But you say that, and one of the main things you do is at the end of this, talking about fear and people not being able to know its truth and choosing your truth. You say that it's the most empowering thing that you've had, and it's kind of ironic because in my view that's the most debilitating. And it ties into your kind of overemphasizing of self-worth. It's this overcorrecting on these principles. This, both, again, as I mentioned, with fear and with money. And to point it out, there's a lot of people will bring up that verse, that the spirit of fear, Christ has not brought us the spirit of fear, or the love of money is the root of all evil, or you can't serve God and mammon. And they'll bring these up, and they're true and they're correct, but they take it, again, as I said, to the extreme of, well, that means money's evil, or that means fear's evil. And that's not the case at all. And it's the same thing with looking at ourselves and our self-worth. You stated, and it's I believe it's a great impetus for doing this, that you're here to help those that are feeling marginalized, that you're here to help people feel worth, to avoid horrible paths, and I agree they're horrible as far as considering suicide or things of that nature. It's sad, and I think we should do what we can, anytime, to stop anyone from making those terrible and horrible choices, especially if it's because they don't think that they're redeemable or whatever. But we need to emphasize the worth of souls, because it is great.